and welcome, beautiful souls. It's Sapphire. Hope you're all doing amazing. Hope you're having an amazing evening or day or morning, whatever time it happens to be. Thank you so much for tuning in and choosing to spend time with me. The subject of the video is New Age spirituality and cultural appropriation. Um, so before I get into it, please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the bell, or even donate if this content resonates with you. Namaste. All right, let's get into it. So, what is cultural appropriation? According to Encyclopedia Britannica, cultural appropriation is the adoption of elements from one culture by members of another culture, often in a way that is perceived as disrespectful, exploitative, particularly when a dominant culture borrows from a marginalized or minority culture. This practice can lead to the distortion or loss of the original cultural meanings and significance. So, this is something that I kind of left off with the last talk on toxic positivity and New Age spirituality. Another big problem or tendency that is problematic within the spirituality community at broad, but specifically New Age spirituality, tends to be cultural appropriation. How that kind of appears, how that kind of manifests is, you know, people, particularly white people, lighter skinned people, tend to adopt elements of different cultures, different spiritual practices into their own, and or they also adopt the aesthetic, the appearance, and dress like people from a different culture, right? This tends to happen a lot with like African spirituality, African tribal elements, Caribbean, voodoo, let's say Egyptian, Indian, Native American. Yeah, I'd say those are probably the most common ones that folks will borrow from, or, and that's the thing. Ultimately, everything is culture, and in a lot of modern societies like the United States, it's very multicultural, right? It's a big melting pot, big mixing place for a lot of different cultures. Some borrowing from other cultures is inevitably going to happen, right? But the thing is, like I just mentioned with the definition of cultural appropriation, are they being sensitive and like aware of what they're doing, or they're just taking stuff willy-nilly and thinking they're being cool about it, right? Yeah. And another couple of other cultures I see folks borrowing spiritual elements from, or like aesthetic elements from, would be, Wiccan, Celtic culture, and Nordic culture. Now, especially if you're white, that tends to be less problematic for obvious reasons. But yeah, let's just get into why it is a problem. And it's not just a matter of sensitivity, offending other people's feelings or whatever. But that is a big part of it. People of color, of different backgrounds and cultures that tend to be tend to be marginalized, oppressed, like historically marginalized, historically oppressed, historically exploited. It's just not right to borrow their appearance and their cultural elements and stuff, and their aesthetic, their dress, all of that stuff, um, without deferring to them, at least without doing so in a respectful way. But I mean, I have a big problem with even doing that in general, even if there is approval, right? Because it's, you know, historically there's been a problem with white people um, portraying people of color. There's what's the word I'm searching for here? Um, examples are like white face, brown. I mean, black face, brown face. Appropriating another person's look and appearance and all of that, and doing so in an ugly, disrespectful way. Sorry for I'm just trying to search for the word there that I'm thinking of. It's on the tip of my tongue. But anywho, it's not just about being respectful versus being disrespectful. That is part of it. It's also about portraying another culture fairly and accurately, and you know, as someone who's not a part of those other cultures, it behooves you to at least have some knowledge and portray things respectfully if you are going to incorporate elements into your practice. But, you know, defer to the wisdom and the knowledge, the cultural knowledge of people who are actually part of these other cultures. And, you know, I'd like to talk also about my personal experience navigating this, this can of worms, if you will. Um, as far as my appearance, my aesthetic, I only ever go for, well, aside from work, in my personal free time, I only ever go for either either a slob look if it's a lazy day, right? But outside of that, like a pastel goth appearance or a witchy appearance, right? That's my aesthetic. That's my vibe. Like, um, just generic pastel goth, generic witchy vibes. Generally, something in line with like neo Wiccan, neo pagan type of elements. Um, but as far as my spiritual practice is concerned, I there's a great example. So I part of my practice is Celtic, um, like some of those neo pagan, neo Wiccan Celtic elements. Um, Part of the pantheon that I do worship is Celtic. Um, and then the other part of my spiritual practice, as far as deities that I worship, Hindu. I'll explain why that is, but I choose to incorporate elements of Hinduism and Hindu spirituality, um, with love, with respect, and I always defer to the wisdom of people who are Indian, who do worship these Hindu gods and goddesses, and I defer to their texts and their thought leaders. That's how I think we should be fairly portraying other cultures in our spiritual practices. If we are going to incorporate elements of these other cultures, we do so fairly and deferring to the wisdom and the character and the knowledge of these other cultures. You know, that's why I'm trying to keep this video brief and not getting too much into the weeds of the cultural appropriation topic, because I could go on about it, but I feel like what's most respectful is to, defer to content creators of who are people of color. There's many out there who have already created amazing content on this subject. So I defer to them here. I'm just mostly giving my personal take and my personal experience here with this. Let's rewind the clock here of my life. I don't know too much about my heritage, my ancestry. I do know generally what countries they came from, what cultures they came from. Basically, I'm mostly a European mutt with a little bit of just a little bit of Cherokee ancestry as well. Um, but as far as religion, spirituality is concerned, I don't know too much about that. I know that a lot of my family tends to be Christian, and I don't find, I don't resonate with that. I don't find a spiritual or religious home there. And growing up, I think my mom's a little bit religious. My dad almost not at all, but does um, he does believe in some of the philosophy and the spirituality of Buddhism, and that's kind of played a role in my life and my spiritual practice as well. Um, you know, I defer to the teachings of the Buddha for a lot when it comes to a lot. Like, I really respect what the Buddha has offered to the world, to the spiritual community, and I think there's so much wisdom and his ideas, his philosophies just make up a huge part of my philosophical approach when it comes to spirituality as well. Um, but outside of that, I was largely spiritually homeless, if you will. And even culturally homeless in a way, if you will, because I didn't have um, much other than your typical white bread American experience, but from a Californian perspective, right? Um, Growing up, I didn't have that much of a connection to my ancestry, to my out outside of my great grandmother. My great grandmother, I don't know exactly what she was as far as religion and spirituality go, but she was a psychic. She worked at a bookstore called the Psychic Eye Bookstore. And yeah, definitely a psychic, intuitive person. Did tarot card readings, astrology, chart readings, palm readings as well. Um, you know, I think she was very, very much in touch with that side, that metaphysical side of reality. But as far as what she worshipped or privately believed, don't know too much about that. I think she was largely Christian. Um, but outside of having that knowledge of ancestry and spirituality, I don't know much. And I've, like I was saying, felt kind of spiritually homeless growing up. Um, so I've kind of just put things together as I went along in my life, and I've went through different phases. Even was agnostic or atheistic at a certain point. Um, but yeah, went through different things over time, and then I got back into spirituality, and um, basically kind of grew my beliefs and my practice organically. And I think a big part of when I got back into spirituality was actually informed uh, by my ex and my ex's uh, mother in particular, who was a big believer in Hindu spirituality and practiced yoga regularly. And I did my own research and slowly got more into that as well. And I think for my ex, though, kind of um, like Neo Wiccan Celtic elements resonated with her more, and that ended up informing my spiritual practice as well. When I went to reclaiming, it's this group of pagans, witches. It's called reclaiming. I went to their rituals every now and then with her. Also, just by myself as well, and just really got into it. Just really got into their ritual practices and their beliefs, and just incorporated it into my own practice. And you know, I think there's nothing necessarily wrong with doing that, as long as you're doing so respectfully and honoring where this came from, and deferring to the wisdom of the original thought leaders, yes, and the current thought leaders and practitioners of um, and the cultural leaders among these faiths and among these cultures. Defer to them. As far as if you're gonna dress in a garb of a different culture, it's not something I do. I stay away from that. I like I was saying, go for a generic pastel goth, go for a generic witchy appearance. Maybe it's a little bit informed by neo, neo pagan, neo Wiccan elements, like Celtic elements, and that's fine. I think if a white person is gonna borrow anything in terms of appearance, borrow from, like, those historically European culture appearance stuff, versus going into borrowing the appearance of other cultures. I I'm still searching for that word, but it has that flavor of mockery, of mocking and being insensitive of other cultures. It's like a minstrel show, and that's not okay, especially not in the 21st century. You know, I know um, we've got the far right, Trump, and all that reactionary, racist um, stuff going on currently, and especially in the USA, we have all this historical racist baggage, but that doesn't mean it's okay to perpetrate, you know, harmful stereotypes of other cultures. Um, so when I ever talk about elements of Hindu culture in particular, because Hindus, they have been historically oppressed and marginalized by by the British in their own country, and immigrants here have been historically marginalized and oppressed, and maybe that's less so these days. People are more, at least in America, are more friendly to Indian people, but they also tend to get lumped in with Muslim people, among folks that are, particularly racist and ignorant, and they, you know, they foist those that Islamophobic hatred onto in Hindu people, even though they have got nothing to do with it. And Islamophobia is its own separate thing, but it's you know plenty racist and bigoted to um, be hating on them in the first place. But to do so, to like think, oh, these Indian people are also that, and gotta hate them, just magnifies it. So yeah. So whenever I talk or portray elements of Hindu spirituality and I talk about it, I defer to the wisdom of those spiritual texts of those original thought leaders, and to current practitioners and thought leaders. And but generally I try to keep it to a minimum, out of respect. And if you want to learn more about Hinduism and Hindu culture, don't learn it from me. As much as I know, don't learn it from me. Learn it from Indian people, Hindu sources. Those will be the most valuable in the first place, because I have limited knowledge. Privately, yes, I may have had experiences with at least a few deities, in particular Ganesha, Lakshmi, Kali, and Hanuman, and Shiva, Saraswati, Vishnu. I may have had personal experiences with them, but I don't wish to portray them or anything related to Hinduism in an insensitive way. Oh, and before I start trailing off and letting y'all go, my partner, she's into Egyptian, the Egyptian pantheon, Egyptian spirituality, and I applaud her for that. But she doesn't know too much about her background either, other than she's part white and part Asian, but doesn't know the particular details. So part of her, she's kind of split, just like me. Part of her worship is Egyptian, and part of her worship is Norse, like Nordic countries, Scandinavian. So that's really cool. But I mean, I think, just like her, kind of spiritually homeless, if you will, in the beginning, and has crafted, like, put together something that is personally meaningful to her, but she chooses to portray it only in respectful ways, and she doesn't dress in like an Egyptian garb, and choose to be culturally insensitive to Egyptian people. So you know just be wise, and just be compassionate, and just be respectful. There's nothing necessarily wrong with incorporating religious or spiritual elements from other cultures into your spiritual practice, if you personally resonate with them and find them meaningful. But do so in a respectful way, And when you talk about them, do so in a respectful and knowledgeable and accurate way if you're going to do it. Otherwise, just simply just defer to the wisdom and the wisdom and the capability of other creators that actually happen to be from those cultures. And definitely be sensitive about your appearance and your attire, and steer away from portraying folks from another culture in ways that might be perceived as mocking, or portraying perpetrating racial stereotypes. Because I've noticed, unfortunately, a lot of you know spiritual creators, a lot of new agey spiritual creators tend to dress up in a lot of maybe like Native American garb, or Rastafarian garb, or African garb, or Indian garb, um, and in ways that are definitely not culturally sensitive, and that's just not right. Be smarter, folks. you know wear You can definitely wear a necklace here and there, wear little emblematic things that connect with what you personally find meaningful for your spiritual practice. But you know don't portray others in ways that may be culturally insensitive, right? Or perpetrate you know out of date or inaccurate stereotypes. um yeah, that's really all I had to say. Try to keep it short, but I wanted to give you an idea of my personal experience with this subject, and also give you words of wisdom and encouragement. Perhaps if you are worried about being culturally sensitive, and just be loving, just be compassionate, and just be wise and respectful. That's really all I have to say. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with me, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Much love. Namaste. Blessed be.